You know him and you love him, the former Deputy Prime Minister and former Leader of the Nationals. Give it up for Barnaby Joyce.
Well, there you go. Friendly crowd. Don't get many of them these days. It's always great when you get given the chance to speak before lunch. You've got lunch coming up after this, and I always have the greatest sympathy for the person who speaks after lunch. They get to speak to the snoring crowd. For my 20 minutes or so today, I just want to touch on a little bit of philosophy and a little bit of reality and give you a close after that. Let's start by, first of all, I'll start by thanking this great organisation and what they're doing and making you stand up and you taking time out of your day to come in here to be part of the political environment of our nation, of our land, be willing to take the time to make a change. It's very important that you're here. Thank you very, very much. I want to talk about conviction. Conviction. You know, a politician that has the wrong conviction is a very, very dangerous person. Very, very dangerous. And a politician that has no conviction is very, very useless. Very, very useless. So what you see, of course, is that people are aware that without conviction, they don't want to be known as useless, and they don't want to be known as dangerous, but they do want a job, is that they will always try and assuage you as to their conviction. Now, we know what conviction sounds like. It sounds like rah-rah, bottle of rum, rah-rah, I'm in there fighting, rah-rah. There's a lot of words. It comes with things such as values and principles, but they never actually define what they are. Not quite sure what they are. Take them into the prickles on a hard subject, such as abortion, you'll never get an answer. You'll never get an answer. I'll just duck away from that one. But what does it look like? What does conviction look like? Well, it looks like derision. It looks like ridicule. It looks like hate. It can look like jail. And it can look like death. Conviction comes with some serious impediments. But you need conviction to stand for the things that are right and to bring about change when required. You know, when your person doesn't have conviction, they float around on this sort of raft of platitudes underneath this sort of babbling fountain, underneath this babbling fountain of the bleeding obvious, where they're very emphatic about things that your child could have told you. And they always tell you that they're salty, you know, like Colossians. They're, speak with grace and season with salt. They're very salty people. But unfortunately, we've got to make sure that they, in standing up for conservative values, that the first thing they do is change the nomenclature around conservative. Conservatism so often is seen as a pejorative. It's seen as, there's something quirky about it. You're not going to have much luck at the pub on a Friday night walking around telling everybody you're a conservative. That's not going to get you very far. What you have to actually just be, but we've been sucked into this form of nomenclature. You've got to say, I'm conservative, I'm prudent. I'm very prudent with my money. I'm sober in how I understand things. I build on what has been proven. What has been proven is what I build on. I don't jump off buildings thinking I'm going to sprout wings and fly. And we don't take unwarranted risks because they hurt people. They damage things. They harm things. Now, progressive, they say just the word progressive. You're already having more luck on a Friday night at a pub as soon as you say, I'm a progressive. I'm a progressive. I'm well dressed. I'm a sharp dresser, and I'm a progressive. But progressive is seen as a virtue, isn't it? And its adherents are seen as the enlightened. They're the enlightened progressives. But really, it's just socio and economic experimentation with people's lives. It's social and economic experimentation, for which the beneficiary is the observer, who can usually do it from a position of comfort, so readily from a position of wealth. wealth, probably inherited wealth in many instances. And the person who pays the price is the subject, where these decisions land on their head. So that's part of the philosophy. What I want to do is to give you a couple of examples of where it's in full flight at the moment, 2 of them. The first is renewables. Renewables. Let's start with item number 1, ladies and gentlemen. They're not renewable, okay? They're not renewable. And what we have is the industrious, the hard-working, the assiduous, having to succumb to those who are the riffing, the coltish, and this sort of iconoclastic dirge which we have with renewables. Let's actually look at what's happening to our nation. Renewables are 100% imported. We do not make wind towers in Australia. We do not make solar panels in Australia. The cobalt in the solar panels most likely came from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, including things such as child labour. They'll probably put together in Sichuan province in China with Uyghur slave labour. Yet somehow they arrive on a roof and they're moral. They're moral. A statement of my morality. They're also completely and utterly ineffective. In this nation, we have successfully sat back as the price of power has gone through the roof, the reliability has gone through the floor, and the money has gone overseas. And it builds on it. We have now got the greatest division in regional areas, where I am. Ladies and gentlemen, got home probably 2 months ago. There was a decomposing black plastic. I know it's a decomposing black plastic bag because it said so on the cover that it was a decomposing black plastic bag. Stuck to my gate with a wooden clothes clip because it's all renewable. Telling me, my family, in front of my house with myself and Vicky, we're going to have a 1 kilometre wide transmission corridor in front of our house. And if that's not good enough, it's like a complete set of imported steak knives, we're getting another one at the top end of the place, 2. 2 for the price of 1. To move a power source that no one can afford down to people in Sydney who can't pay their bills. Because the vibe says you've got to do it. Because the kiddies are coming home from the Teachers Federation telling us we've got to do this. And we've got to stand up. This is crazy. This is crazy. I mean, and the companies in our area, Chinese. I'm sure they're worried about the environment in Australia. I'm sure in Beijing they're tortured about the environment in Australia. France, likewise, Paris. How could you possibly have a cup of coffee in the afternoon without worrying about what's happening in Australia? The Dutch, same. Very good at making money, the Dutch. Spanish. The only thing we don't have is an Australian company. Now, we're just the suckers who pay for it because we're the silly ones. We've seen this before in history. The Dutch, we go back to the Dutch, tulip mania. When they convinced the world that the economy could be run on flowers, until someone discovered that they actually grow themselves. And things sort of came unstuck and it collapsed. Then in 1700s, you had the South Sea bubble. You can make money by just selling nothingness. If you just keep selling nothingness and people keep paying more for the nothingness, then it always sustains itself. And it's even better when King George at the time went and underwrote it all. And they said, nothingness endorsed by the government. It must be righteous. Sounds very like renewable power. Nothingness endorsed by the government must be righteousness. And so cryptocurrency, that one sort of come and gone. And now we've got renewables. But all the rest, Australia can sort of get past. But we've actually dug this one right into our economy. Net zero by 2050. Sounds like a 1980s band, and not a very good one. Do you have a look at, Net Zero Australia, with their PhDs from Princeton, from Melbourne, from Sydney, pro-renewable group, government endorsed. The cost of net zero by 2050, 2060, 7 to 9, wait for it, trillion dollars. 7 to 9,000 billion or 7 to 9,000 million, 7 to 9 trillion dollars. Now, if you convert that to today's terms, we in Australia, because we are so clever, we're importing all this stuff and we're going to spend 7 to 9 trillion dollars by 2060, whether it's government or private enterprise. I'll tell you one thing about them, they want a return. They want a return. They want their money back. They want you to pay for it. That's the same cost as the reconstruction of Europe after the Second World War under the Marshall Plan. That was paid for by hundreds of millions of people. You know who's paying for this? You! You know, why do you do it? Why do you do it to yourselves? Honestly, why do you do it to yourselves? And so this is the sort of things, if you're conservative, you've got to make the stand, you've got to stand up, you've got to take the hits, you've got to be disliked, you've got to really spoil the G&T parties on the yacht, you've got to be the discordant voice, be strong, be salty, Otherwise, your country's going to take a hit. It's going to take a big one. Let's go to the next one. The Voice. That is a really bad program today. You've got a bad band and you've got a bad program from today. The Voice, look at this. Do we ever sit back and just think about this? So we, in 2023, are about to bring in a clause which is based on race. So how does this work? So we're now calibrating people in races now. How does this work? If you're here first, you get more rights than the second. Well, my family's Irish, so we were here second. So I must have more rights than the Vietnamese. And the Indians, you're way out. I've definitely got more rights than you. This is making so much sense. This clause is making so much sense on the premise of arrival. Next thing, it's not elected, it's selected. Massive political power, and it's selected. I mean, we've got a little thing called democracy. It's working pretty well. I mean, there's a lot of areas. Russia doesn't like it anymore. China's kind of over it. A lot of parts in Africa are over it. But we're kind of fond of it. Democracy works well. Which is, if you're going to have political power in our nation, you are voted for by a mandate of the Australian people. The Australian people vote for you. And by reason of that, we have a greater proportion of Indigenous people in our parliament than there is in the general population. And I'm very proud of that. And when I tell you, there are other people who have Indigenous heritage in our parliament, but they don't even tell you about it. They just don't think it's relevant and they keep it to themselves. So what else about the Voice? It's in the Constitution. You can't get rid of it. Once it's there forever. We've had something very similar in the past. It's called ATSIC. Cronyism, nepotism, corruption. Jeff Clark, wasn't he a shining light? Jeff Clark. And now we're going to get them back, only this time they're there for good. They're there. Our own House of Lords, sitting down there. Quasi-House of Lords. But I tell you what, I think this thing's going down. I think it's going down a screaming heap. We should look after people because of the conditions they are in, not on the colour of their skin. So if the problems... So if there are problems in Alice Springs, you will be helped by the Australian government, by the Australian people, whether you're white, whether you're Aboriginal, whether you're Chinese, whether you're Asian, Malaysian, Eskimo, it doesn't matter. The Australian people will reach out a hand to you because of the conditions you are in the place of the place of privation. This is something... But that's not what we're being offered. And do you honestly think, if there's all these marvellous solutions that this enlightened group will finally discover and then bring about to fix all these problems, then what the hell are they doing at the moment? What? Give it to me. Give me the answers if they're all out there. Why wait for the Voice? Start doing it now. Start doing it now. And then there's this one. It's the greatest swindle, isn't it? This one. They tell you about the legislation, which is the Voice, after you voted for it. And that's a mighty fine trick. Mighty fine trick. You wander into the constitutional church, you get married, and you meet your constitutional spouse on the way out. I wanted to meet them beforehand. I might not have liked them. I might not have liked them. I don't want to meet them on the aisle as I walk out the door. But they say it to you with a straight face. Oh, we'll do that legislation afterwards. Afterwards. And the Australian people are saying, no. I want to see the contract for the house before I buy it, not after I buy it. But, you know, that's why you got to stand up. That's why you come to these things. That's why you have to be heard. That's why you got to listen. That's why you got to organise. That's why with renewables, I'm going to try and get everybody down to Canberra, make a big racket on the front lawn, scare the politicians. Politicians don't worry about anything except that they can just about hear you from the chamber because you're outside. When they just about hear you, they'll start thinking, that sounds like my job. What's my next job, honey? Packing shelves at Bunnings. Now, what are they talking about out there? And that's what we've got to do. That's what we're going to do with renewables. That's why I'm organising a campaign across our nation to get them down there. So it's important. You know, history is the diviner of politics. History is the diviner of politics. We go back to the start. As I said, you'll never get anywhere unless you've got commitment. Bad commitment, very dangerous. No commitment, very useless. But history will divine as to who actually has effect and who doesn't have effect. Remember at Woodstock there were 32 acts. 32 acts, and if anybody in this room can name 5 of them, then I think you should get another life. But there were 32. Everyone says Woodstock, yeah, Jimi Hendrix, The Who, I think. And that's about it. That's where it stops, because the rest didn't have any effect. They just occupied the space. They were just there. And a lot of politicians are just there, right? And the thing that makes them something else is you. You. It's not about me, it's about you. You make them something else. You're the person who stands behind them and drives them. That gives them that base. That gives them that fervour. That gives them that sense of salt. Sense of salt. You give them that sense of strength to drive forward. Their job is to look after our nation. To look after our nation, to keep us safe. We have a very boring constitution which has meant that we've never had a civil war. We've got a very good constitution. It's not exciting. We don't want to make it an exciting document. So your role here today is imperative of that. Imperative. And what you've got to do from here, though, is don't stop. I mean, I know that when you go to lunch, you're going to be so excited by my speech and tell everybody about it, but you can't stop there, right? You've got to make sure you take that action to the next level. You've got to make sure you back yourself in. You've got to make sure you put your money where your mouth is. You've got to make sure that you're involved in supporting the proper candidates that stand behind your nation, that have your strong beliefs, and we've just went through 2 of them in there, because that's the only way the nation will work. In closing, ladies and gentlemen, I heard Bridget. She was quoting Theodore Roosevelt, and others were quoting Winston Churchill, and so, you know, I always try to trump them, and I will on this one, because I'll go to Matthew 5:13, where it says, "You are the salt of the earth, but what is the point of salt if it loses its saltiness? It has no point but to be thrown outside and trodden underfoot." Don't let that happen to you. All the best and God bless.
How good is Barnaby Joyce? Ladies and gentlemen, that was based. Put your hands together for Barnaby.